Hello, Talking in Stations fans. Welcome to our political show for the year as we look at the results for CSM. Well, actually, our exit poll results, which is a little bit different for the CSM election, which will actually be unveiled this Saturday. The winners will be unveiled at Eve North. With me today, we have Dirk McGurk.
Good evening.
And we have Brisk Rubal.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be back on Talking in Station.
Okay, so we have done some talking about this election for the last month, and we can't wait for results. So we decided to put out some kind of a poll to see what you guys would answer. And so we got some results we're going to share with you later on, and there's some surprises in there, right?
Oh, there's one very big surprise in there. We'll save that for later.
Okay, right. But let's first get started with the CSM election this year. And just to do a little bit of a review, Dirk, what do you think about this year's CSM runs?
I don't know. I mean, I thought that it was kind of God. What's the way to put it? It seems like it's getting a little bit old hat. It seems like it's getting a little bit repetitive. But I think it was generally about normal. I thought maybe there was some actual negative campaigning out there this year that maybe I hadn't seen as much of in the past. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, you were a target of that. But I think it was basically par for the course. I think you had some puffery from the big blocks out there that were kind of chest beating as to how this was going to go, and they're not wrong. But it was all par for the course.
I don't know. I think this year was totally different than previous years. I think the blocks were really strong. I think Brisk mentioned that earlier, right, Brisk?
Well, I think if you're looking at this compared to last year, I think the one thing that I was most surprised about was the number of significantly well-known, high-ranking alliance leaders and folks that decided to jump into this race. We didn't have a lot of that in 2013 in CSM13 last year when I ran. We haven't had that in a couple years. So you've got guys that have significant blocks behind them. Gobbins, for instance, with Pandemic Horde, Villy with Legacy, Dunk Dinkle with Brave. Guys that have a significant number of voters that are motivated, that are going to show up. You didn't have that last year. I mean, there were 3 slots open of folks that weren't incumbents, but a number of the incumbents were small block guys or low sec guys, or folks that had a power base that was not based on nullsec politics. So those seats were taken, and then you had me and Killer B and Merkelgen coming in and taking the last 3. So it was weird. I just feel like this time around had more candidates with a lot of juice behind them that are going to generate a lot of votes, as opposed to last year where it was kind of a little bit more open.
Brisk, who was the replacement candidate for sort of your style of thing? Had a base of support behind them that was strong enough, let's say, to keep them on the board, but also kind of went out with a genuine kind of campaign to broaden their base?
I think that was obviously Dunk. I think Dunk was the Brisk this year. He has his support with Brave. He's done his videos. People know who he is. They like him. He's present in all of the media. He did the shows. He did the interviews. I mean, he did a lot of candidate campaigning. Other candidates have done that. But I think compared to, if you're looking at who the most Brisk-like of those folks was, not in terms of politics or anything, but in terms of just stature and where they are in the game, I think that's Dunk this time around. I mean, although he has way more stature than I did last year.
Well, yeah, and that's the difference that I was going to say, is the fact that he sort of came in. I mean, you had a base behind you of your alliance, but I think Dunk was kind of one of those people that was really already known before running for CSM. Dunk's been around a while. I mean, he is the briefcase of friendship guy at player meets and things like that. So I mean, there is that difference. I mean, although I do think he did the things that you said.
He's been going to meets too. He went to Eve Down Under, and he's already at Eve North, so he's making the rounds. And I think
already sending us tweets of him of his view outside his hotel room.
he has gone to Vegas, and I think last year was his first time at in Iceland for FanFest. So this might be something a little bit new that he's traveling a bit much, or not a bit much, but a bit more than he did the years previous. And it may not
And I
have
think
anything to do with the
that's going to stand
election,
him in good stead.
but
Because
yeah,
I mean, the one good thing about having a candidate like Dunk that everybody has met is you can say, oh, "Look, I met this guy. I know who he is." You know, and if you're somebody that's going to go to an Eve meet, you're more likely than not somebody that's going to run for CSM or vote for CSM, and that makes it, you know, that gives Dunk an extra leg up on some of these folks that folks have never met before.
yeah, and he's a delightful guy in real life, and he's like, he brings this briefcase full of booze and he opens it up and he says, "Come on, let's have a drink together." So he's got his, he's kind of like Gintana, and he has funny suits that he wears. He has one with, I think his wife makes him, if I'm not mistaken, but one that has a bunch of like stars and stuff. So it's neat that he's making the rounds, and people are recognizing him. And then also he has Nullsec. You said, Dirk, I think somebody that's got Nullsec behind them, but also has the ability to widen that audience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and whether it be nullsec or not, just an organization behind them that you can use as that base that kind of keeps you in that. But I want to ask another question. Are we at all surprised this year by the number of candidates that still, when you listen to sort of the hue and cry about how it's nullsec dominated, how the general consensus is you better come with a base, that you still have so many candidates that are willing to try, even knowing that they may be that first one out at 20 votes or something like that.
It doesn't surprise me because there's no barrier to entry. I mean, one of the reasons why in real life you have to pay filing fees and get signatures and those types of things is to keep out the random folks that'll just put their name on anything because it doesn't cost anything. So all these people had to do was Photoshop their passport or take a photocopy of their passport, send it to CCP, and they're in. You know, so there's no barrier to entry that would stop random folks who really don't intend to actually do anything from getting in the race. So hey, I bet if they were to add, it's going to cost you a million ISK, or it's going to cost you a 500 plex or something to run for CSM, you'd have a lot fewer candidates, and only the ones that actually legitimately think they have a shot would do that. I'm not advocating for that. I'm simply saying that I think that would be that would reduce the number of random candidates that nobody's ever heard of.
Okay,
Now,
we'll get to.
go
Go
ahead, Matt.
ahead.
No, I was just basically going to see if we had how many total submissions we had from this. Maybe some of the stuff that that we did exclude. We can go through some of that kind of work. I suppose.
Well, first, let's go through a little bit of the candidates list. If we could bring up Noisy Gamer's website, he has something called CSM Wire. And the reason CSM Wire is on his website is because this used to be something that was a group effort by CSM Watch, which was the Cap Stable podcast group. They had this side project called CSM Watch, and they were the watchdogs over the political officials. That was the role that they took. And they would have these what do you call it, interviews, and then they would have a little round table to talk about what the questioners thought of the interviewees to kind of sum it up. And that's what they did for a few years, and that was about 2014, 15, 16 ish. So their cap stable is now gone, and so is CSM Watch.
Well,
As
hold
far
on
as
a
I
second.
know.
And I was gonna say this, but Noisy brought it up out there that this wasn't part of CSM. This is something that Noisy's been doing on his own. CSM
Oh,
Wire and CSM Watch were not affiliated.
And it's
oh,
great. And
okay.
I'm glad that somebody in the community is taking the time to do this. It's a huge resource for those of us who are running. And I'm sure it's a resource for folks who are voting, because you can go back, you can look at, you see where everybody is, how old their character is, where they come from. And you get a whole list of, and it links to all of the different stuff that person's put out and their ballot statement. It's great. And I used that a ton last year. And I think Noisy deserves another, big round of applause from everybody for doing this again, because it's a thankless job.
Round of cyber applause for. Why isn't Noisy Gamer in here with us? He's a great analyst. We should
You
have
should
him
be
here.
in
He
here.
follows the
Get in here,
CSM.
Noisy. Come.
Yeah, if you can, jump on.
And if we thank him, is it really a thankless job?
Well, it's not like he's getting paid.
We should leave with a thank you, Scott, right?
Thanking involves money, not just.
All right, so I do want to go through some of the candidates just to point out who we thought was interesting.
They were all interesting in their own way.
Which one?
Well, what do you mean by interesting?
Well, I think there were a lot of interesting candidates, and I think if you want to talk about candidates that were, interesting, obviously you've got all the guys, all the big Nullsec guys that I talked about earlier, Gobbins and Villy. You've got Mike Azariah, former CSM member. He's been on there a ton of times. He's one of the folks that I look to when I'm thinking about high sec stuff. You've got Matterall yourself being on there is cool because it's a significant name in the Eve streaming community. Same with Manic Velocity, having him on there was kind of cool. Just random friends of mine that I've seen and talked to about different sites and stuff, like Lizard Breath, getting her on there. You've had a couple of candidates that have run a bunch of times, like Lorelei from HighSec, who we see all the time running. And then I think it was also interesting, we didn't see Commander A's running. And then there's somebody I'm forgetting. I can't remember what is the bomber dude. I forget his name. He's running too. That was interesting.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. But I can't think of his name either.
Can you think of his name, Dirk? It's like Silver or something. It's like some kind of bad tequila, if I remember correctly.
It's like some kind of bad tequila.
Like Jose Cuervo Silver.
Olmeca Gold? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, there you go. That's right. It's that's that guy. Wasn't he the guy that got banned for input broadcasting? The whole, they use ASIC miners now these days. The Bombers Bar guy was. Oh no, that wasn't him. That was Martian.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I've talked to Olmeca, and he sounds interesting guy. He's a smart guy, and he's really lit the imagination of people who've seen his video and some of the stuff he does in the game. He's clearly an advanced player. He understands advanced mechanics, but he also looks at EVE Online as something that can go through some change, so it's not just the usual stuff that we're seeing nowadays. I'd like to welcome Noisy Gamer. How are you, Noisy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, if you can hear me.
Yeah, you sound great. Sorry, I made an assumption that CSM Wire was part of CSM Watch, and so it wasn't. This is your thing. You built it yourself.
Yeah, it was. I built this about the same time that the Cap Stable guys were doing their stuff, and I think I had it a year out, and then they called their stuff CSM Watch. So they put a 2 or 3 years worth of real effort into it. I can tell a couple stories, but yeah, I was part of CSM Watch, but yeah, the website was always something a little bit different.
Yeah. So who's interested you this year? Who's kind of an outlier or somebody interesting that you enjoyed watching during this campaign?
I was gonna say Blood Ruin. Mm-hmm. I just don't know how serious he was about the whole thing, so I didn't vote for him. But I read his stuff and I listened to the interview, and he sounded interesting. And then he didn't campaign until after the voting had already started, which was really weird.
Man, I'll tell you, I think Pando and I were talking about this because we were going over a list of folks for an underdog ballot that we put together for In It, and Blood Ruin was on the top of our list. But our biggest frustration with him was he sounded good when he did his interviews. He answered questions the way we would like them to be answered. He had a lot of similar ideas to those we had been talking about internally, but he never campaigned. So nobody knew anything about him. He throws up a Reddit post 2 days after the voting started. I mean, that frustrates me. I mean, that's one of my biggest frustrations, and I'll get on my soapbox here for a minute. One of my biggest frustrations with these campaigns is folks that are not big block candidates that don't campaign. Because if you're not a big block candidate and you're not bringing 900 to 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500, however it is, votes that you can bank on because your guys are behind you, then you've got to go out there and you've got to make up for that in shoe leather. And that means you got to be on the shows, you got to be on Reddit, you got to be on the forums, you got to do advertising, you got to do commercials or campaign videos or something, and just something that sets you apart. And I mean, I tease Olmeca a lot, and I give him a lot of shit. But I'll be honest, he ran one of the better. He wants to say he's ran the best campaign. We'll see if he wins. If he wins, he can claim that. But he ran a good campaign. He did his due diligence. He did what he needed to do in terms of Reddit. He did what he needed to do in terms of his campaign video, his whaling video, his documentary, whatever it is. It was 25 minutes too long, but it was a good video in its own right. As an Eve thing that just was interesting to people. So I think that's how you really got to do it. And I don't think anybody else really took that route, and that's unfortunate because if I did anything last year, is I proved that you can be a nobody, and if you come out and you have the support of your group, whether it's a big block group or not, and you put the shoe leather in, you can win. And I think the only person that has done that this time around potentially is Olmeca. And that I don't. That's no detraction to you, Matt, at all, because you're in the same boat. But you're like me last year. You got NC dot and you went out and played the game.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, he's got enough. He's on enough ballots. I mean, I think we'll get into that later. But
yeah, okay. Actually, what we're gonna do is we're gonna continue talking about candidates, and we're gonna bring in results from different regions as they report into us live tonight. And one of the first regions that is reporting in is Imencia, who overwhelmingly has voted for Vili. So I think that's a safe region for Vili, being that it belongs to sovereignty that he is affiliated with. Let's bring in Vili now to see how he feels about that. Hey, Vili, how's it going? Let's check your mic.
Hello. How you doing?
Hey. So we can report with some confidence that Imencia and Tenerifis and parts of Catch are overwhelmingly voting for you.
That's it?
Are you surprised?
Is it a surprise? No, just kidding. So how's it going, Vili? What do you think about the election? You didn't really campaign very much, did you?
No, I mean, I knew I had the votes through coalition strength, so I wasn't too worried about campaigning, and my political enemies would have just utilized it as an opportunity to throw sticks and burn at me. I did some press, I did some media to try to make sure people understood what I stood for as best I could, but I didn't run hard on any particular piece, I guess you could say.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that you I guess farmed out or outsourced is the word I'm looking for, the balloting negotiations to your diplomat. Is that right?
Yeah, so Dran from Test handled most of our diplomatic discussions regarding the CSM ballot. I'm kind of busy at the moment running a war and delegate. So delegate.
Yeah.
So you like had a campaign manager.
Well,
that's good. That's professional.
Yeah, no, actually, that's pretty much what he was. To be honest, he sorted out a lot of the nitty gritty details. Dran's a pretty capable guy, and he can be hard when he needs to be hard, and he can be smooth when he needs to be smooth. So he's a great person to do that kind of thing for.
And for the record, I think that's great. I don't have a problem with the big block candidates that have their votes baked in. I don't see the need for them to waste time campaigning. I want them to keep doing what they're doing, which is running their alliances and being content creators. That's as important, I think, to folks on the CSM than somebody out there that's actively campaigning. My biggest issue with the campaigning is when it's folks that do not have those votes, who want to run, who have good ideas, but they never get a chance to put them out in front of anybody because they don't get out and do the basic work that you need to do to get your name ID up and to get people to support you. Vili's pretty much already elected. Same with Eris, same with Merck, same with Gobbins. All of those guys they're going to be on there no matter what. And that's why I find it frustrating when folks don't do what they need to do, even though it's pretty obvious, and you can tell the things that folks need to do based on who has won in the past by doing them. And I'm not the only one.
Well, and it's literally the same thing we say every year, right? Like, you can't 2 weeks before the election all of a sudden think that you're going to get your name made out there somewhere, right? And for the block candidates, regardless of the base, typically the people that they tend to run have in one way or another also had their name out there for some reasonable period of time.
Now,
I just want to bring up one thing, and when it comes to legacy and legacy history in CSM, Brave always gets their candidate on. If Brave backs a candidate, that candidate wins, even if it takes a few loops to do so. Test Alliance, please ignore on the other hand, never has had a candidate win. They've got some sort of curse on them.
well, I don't know if they had a candidate in the last race, considering their one candidate was disqualified. But this year they have two
Exactly.
candidates. Yeah.
Exactly. Something always comes up to make it so that the test candidate doesn't win.
Well, let's go back to Billy since he's here, and were you guys also kind of whipping the vote, Billy? I mean, was this not just a let's negotiate the ballots out there, let's put out a ballot? I mean, was there an active thing this year to sit there and say, hey, test, wake up, this is our year to actually vote and vote together?
Yeah, I think so. I think we did 2 pings a day, so that's 20 odd
Good.
reminders for guys to go do what they need to do. And I think most guys, especially in Legacy, we're living the reality and the consequences of poor decisions made by CCP and what can happen if they're not given. How do I put this? I'm not going to say that the previous CSMs did a bad job. It's just that the voices weren't strong enough, perhaps, and it creates a situation where sometimes you need to have all those aggressive voices together, saying that this is bad, don't do this, to achieve the success you need.
I see. I want to actually point to the fact that you have two candidates this time. You also have Cornac. What's his last name? Firefist.
Firefist.
Yeah, former Brave guy, now part of Test, and he's running also on your ballot. And a lot of the negotiations that Test was doing were for him, not necessarily for you. I think that was a strategic move, right?
So I mean, we're Test and Legacy, whatever, and even with Dunk running on the Brave ticket, at no point were we really lacking confidence that we could put one person on the ticket or on the CSM. That was never something that we really felt was a question. The question became, we had data from a lot of the Jintan votes last year, who was our second after Creature on our ticket for the 2 days of voting we did. So we knew we had a rough idea how many votes we could generate, and we looked at the thresholds of what it takes to get on the CSM with the STV and all the rest. So we looked at it and we're like, if we properly space this, we can probably get the second or third highest vote total and the 8th or 9th spot, and that's really what we aim to do with is put Cormac in there in the 8th or 9th role and pick up enough votes to ensure that we've got a strong representation this year.
Yeah, and there were some good positions traded. So Dran did a good job on NC dot. He got Dran in number 5, I believe. And I think all around the ballots for other nullsec places, he was on, I believe he was on Hordes as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of those mid-tier slots don't really do you a whole lot of good in the way the STV system works. And somebody changed their mind on the deal that they negotiated with us. And
oh, really?
Yes, and just didn't tell us. And then we saw their ballot, and we're like, oh, well, fuck you too, I guess. But
it's a reason for war, Billy.
Well, no, it's.
Well, I mean, to Billy's point's absolutely valid. If you're looking at a lot of the nullsec ballots, and this is Noisy can comment on this as well because he's forgotten more about the STV than the rest of us have learned put together. But the reality is, even for the biggest blocks, even for Imperium, you can get potentially 1, 2, or 3, depending on how many folks you get out to turn out to vote, of your ballot on. But number 4 on down is generally just an endorsement. It's we like this guy. The chances of votes trickling down in a meaningful number to anybody below 4 is pretty much not going to happen unless the number of total votes is so low and the percentage of that groups is so high that it could have an impact. Last year on the Imperium ballot, I didn't get any Imperium ballot votes, and I was number 5 in the same position Billy's in now. Judge, I don't believe got any.
He did. He got a significant amount.
Did he? Which round did he get them at the very end?
He got them. Okay, basically, he got enough to save him from being eliminated in the last 2 rounds. So up until rounds 35 and 36, he was holding his own, but it was in round 35 that the trickle that he got from not just the official goon ballot, but the rest of the people that were kind of voting the same.
Okay.
That trickle saved him in the last 2 rounds.
Okay. So generally, so basically, to my point, if you're not in the top 4, generally in the top 3 for the other nullsec blocks, you're just not going to get enough trickle down. But then really doesn't need it. He's going to have enough first ballot votes to win, and same with Goblins. But I do appreciate the fact that he did what I think any good candidate does, which is reach out, or even if it's through his campaign manager, reach out to other groups and get on as many ballots as you can. Matterall, you did that well last year. If you look last year, Jintan was on almost 50% of the ballots. That was significant in getting him elected. I was on like 46 or 47%, and that helped me. So if you're going to run, even if you're a big block candidate, it never hurts to trade some votes with folks if you can do that. That's one of the biggest ways of getting elected. And even Olmeca and some of the other guys that are farther down on some of these ballots did the same thing, because they realized the more ballots you're on, the better shot you have of getting some trickle down votes in the later rounds, and that could be the difference between getting on or being TikTok.
That's exactly right. TikTok and Exuki, right? Exuki, Wormhole candidate, had a really strong first vote percentage, but he had nothing after that, and he just couldn't get any traction after that. So that's what he says.
Well, one of the biggest problems that you had was that folks that voted for Exuki didn't vote for TikTok and vice versa, and there were a large number of what I think are clearly identifiable Wormhole ballots that were either bullet voted for one person at the top and then expired because nobody else had votes on them, or there were only 2 or 3 and they ended up expiring. There were significant numbers of obvious Wormhole votes last time around that, had they voted Exuki or TikTok on them, the Wormholers would have had a CSM last year besides me.
Basically, yeah. Basically, with the Wormholers, it looked like none of the Wormhole candidates reached out to anybody else, and Azuki included. And what it looks,
you talking
and
about
then
this year?
so last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah, so basically last year nobody worked with each other. If the Western players would have gotten together with the Russian players and worked together, then they probably would have got somebody on. They would have been able to take that last spot, I think. But they didn't work. They didn't work together.
Yeah, and what working together looks like is you put the guy that you want up front that's a wormholer, and then you put the other guy that you don't want that's a wormholer in number 2 spot, and then the third wormholer in number 3 spot. And that way you keep the wormhole vote whole among those 3. So as the multiple tribes elect their guy, the residual votes after their first guy is knocked out, or their guy is knocked out, goes still to a wormholer, and that's not what happened.
I mean, and that's the biggest problem. If you're not organized enough, or you're not popular enough with the folks that are in the same region as you, it makes it very difficult to do that. And that I think was the biggest frustration that I had with the Wormhole guys last year, and I hope that they fix that this year. But I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. The other thing, I mean, Olmeca in the chat noted that this is the vote swapping is a necessity, and that provides nullsec dominance. It does, but the reason why it's not because nullsec it dominates because of numbers or anything. It's because we're better organized, and that's the biggest issue for any third-party candidate. And I consider anybody that's not a null block or a big block candidate to be third-party. You have to organize, and that's hard to do if you don't have in-game structures to do it. So I think that's why you don't see a lot of high-sec candidates other than somebody like Steve, who is organized and motivates his people to show up and make sure that they vote. It makes it very difficult to get those folks from other parts of the game on the CSM, which is why I think it's more important that the people that are being looked at for the roles be people that are going to do what's in the best interest of the game and have a background and knowledge of more than just what they like to do in their nullsec area, so that they can have a meaningful input on behalf of people that they represent, who play the game differently than they do. So that's one thing I think is frustrating, and there's no real way to change it that makes any sense, or that would not be completely impractical for CCP to do.
Well, let me just go back to in history a little bit. Back in 2013 in CSM8 election, and that's the first time in the STV, 10 candidates from that weren't nullsec blocks. It was NPC, null, and high and low. They got together and they formed a ticket, and out of that ticket, Mike Azariah wound up surviving.
It takes the organization. I mean, that's
okay.
You're exactly right.
How do we think Mike's doing this year? Because he's got competition with Steve Rnukin. Do you think there's a vote split there, or a vote split with Manic Velocity, or myself, or any other more personality types?
I mean, look, Mike and Steve were on at the same time, so I think that to some extent, they do kind of have some of their own constituencies out there. It will be interesting. I do think that Mike is probably going to have a solid showing. For those people that knew him from back then. I question whether or not he's been gone from the CSM, and really other than kind of doing his Magic School Bus stuff, enough to have had a big impact this year, enough to get on. But I think that he's going to have a solid showing for having come back, out of retirement.
The hard part for Mike, and I hate to say this because I like him a lot, is I don't know how many people remember him. Outside of us veterans who remember when he was on past CSMs, if you're looking at the newer players, particularly in Nullsec, the 2017, 2018, 2019 players, I don't know if they know him well enough to vote for him, even though he was on my ballots because I like the guy. I think he's pretty cool, and we had him on Open Comms, and he's a good guy. But I don't know if he has the name ID that he had in the past that will be enough to get him enough votes, especially this year with so many null block candidates running.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to note as well that the older players who would remember him don't exist in high sec at the same degree they exist in nullsec, right? Generally, as player age goes up, you end up with a higher propensity of people in nullsec. So a lot of the people who would remember him are now part of nullsec or nullsec blocks, and it's much less likely that his name recognition is going to be able to help him.
Right.
And by the way, because some people have asked out there a few times, so I might as well just say it: the actual results that we don't have as internal leaks right now, the actual results are going to be released during the opening ceremonies at Eve North in Toronto on Saturday. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and what's that? 1400.
1400 Eve.
Yep. So sometime in the opening ceremonies, which is the first session, let's call it, on Saturday for Eve North.
Okay, so that's when the official results will come out. But let's talk about some artificial results, which is stuff that we polled for. We'll start to bring out some of those numbers next. But I want to report that.
Well, we should probably stipulate up front before we start giving out any numbers or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Noisy, you're in the survey kind of business. This is what, plus or minus 100% margin of error, would you say?
I think that's about right.
I'd give it a good 50% margin of error.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody out there understands.
Well, we haven't made balance passes on these numbers to account for null block.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, all right. But we will say at this point, I think it's a safe call to say that Tribute and Veil, well, actually no longer Tribute, but Veil and Geminate have put in their votes, and it looks like they're heavily going for both Gobbins and Killer B.
Is it true that a lot of the polling stations that we tried to go to in the Tribute area were already burned to the ground?
Yeah, they were on fire.
That is absolutely right.
Were there ballots that were lost in that or anything, or had those already been transferred?
There were a number of armed insects at these voting places that were prohibiting people from.
Yeah. There were definitely a lot of ashes, and we tried to recover those chads, but it was impossible. But based on previous polling and the stuff that we did collect, Killaby and Gobbins will probably be on CSM this year, and they hail from Gobbins from Horde, Pandemic Horde, and Killaby from Northern Coalition. He was their.
So they're in Tenal now. Is that right? Is that where NC Dot is now?
I just want to like say that I'll go with Gobbins. I'm not sure about Killaby because I heard comments that they were trying to get 2,500 people from Horde to vote the straight ballot, and if they only get 2,500, I don't think the trickle reaches to Killa enough for him to win.
Really, 2,500 is it's the bar is that high.
Yeah, the quota last year at the beginning was around. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was around 2,600, right? Yeah. So I mean, the only reason like Goons can get 3 guys on is because if you look, I always take Aerith's number in the first round as being the straight ticket Goon voters, and he had like 65 or 6,600 last time. So that's enough. That was enough to get him, Merkel Chen, and an Nominate elected within the first 5 or 10 rounds. If you don't have more than 25, 2,600 votes total for your whole ticket, that's going to be tough. So hopefully the Horde guys voted. They've got the members. They've got the members, obviously, but you got to get them motivated and get out there and make them do it. And that was the hard part. Even last year for me, I tracked every single vote that I could, and I was asking everybody that internally in a knit and anybody that I was friends with on Discords or anything like that to tell me when they voted and how many votes they cast. And I kept it on a spreadsheet. And even then, I only tracked about 1,100 votes that I got, and I ended up with something close to 2,000. So, even when you're doing that and you're out there pushing, you don't know who's showing up for real. And even then, folks that are willing to vote may not be willing to tell you. So I'm hoping that the number for Gobbins that Noisy has there, the 2,500, is low. I think it probably sounds low, given the numbers that they have, but we'll see.
Okay, I heard also that they had a Discord set up, a channel and a Discord set up for people to vote, and they only had like 1,000 people voted for Gobbins in that Discord. So
that was 1,000. Wasn't that 1,000 people in that Discord? That wasn't the number of characters that were totaled up amongst.
I could absolutely be wrong, but I thought that they were counting the number that had voted.
I think that number is at least twice that from information that I have.
Well, I would say if it's 1,000 individuals, then he's fine, because the average Nullsec guy has 5 accounts. So
3.
Is it 3? All right. So even then, that's 3,000. He's over the number. I think at least I have 5. I consider myself to be average. So I would think, generally speaking, if you got 1,000 people saying that they voted, you have at least 5,000 votes there. So I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, from what I've seen of the voting blocks, Gobbins will pass the threshold easily. I don't think there will be a ton of spillover to Killa, but I think there will be.
Okay.
So if
that's the case, then I think Noisy may have a point. Killa might be in trouble. But
yeah, because then the question comes in, what kind of voting power does NC Dot itself, bring to it? Do their renters, somehow get involved? And and of course, given a lot of the things that were going on during this recent election, at least during the election period itself, were they able to pull as many kind of rental votes that would go with their ballot? It remains to be seen.
Last year, they did not do very well. NC did not vote very well. But then again, they were voting for Killaby, I think, first, and then they voted for Sort Dragon second, I think.
And I think Horde had Sort first and Killa second. So, Sort had the second highest number of votes behind Aerith, first ballot votes last time. And I think that was largely because of both, Dead Coalition as well as him being the Horde candidate. But with Horde having their own candidates, more than one, and I think I saw B's on number 1 on NC Dot's ballot, but that's the only one that I saw where he was that high, and then Horde was number 2. So I don't know. We'll find out. Well, a lot of it's going to depend on turnout, because the turnout number generates the quota number, and generally speaking, if you get more than 30,000 or so votes, everybody's going to have to hit the quota. Last year we had like 29, so the last person judge didn't have to hit the quota to get elected, but I expect this time around probably will, because of the number of Nullsec candidates that are running. You're going to have, I think, more pressure on turnout than we've seen in the past.
Yeah,
the past 2 elections.
last year, first round, right? Killer Bee brought in 1,209 first round votes. And that was with him being number one on Horde.
Was it first place votes or 1,200 votes at the end of round one?
No, just the 1,209 initial tally votes.
Who was that?
Killer.
Yeah, so obviously, so that was probably the NC dot votes that he had, and then once, I mean, Sword had 33,000 something plus.
Yes.
So
he's Sword had 3,700 right there. Yeah.
Right. So his 3,700 of those votes, 1,100 of those are gonna trickle down, and that would be enough, to give if he was number 2 on Horde. I think he was, if I remember correctly. That's enough to give him, enough votes with his number 1 to be up there. So I mean, that's generally how this works.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it turns out for Killa. But
this year, Sword Dragon doesn't have the support of Northern Coalition or Horde or Pandemic
I agree.
Legion.
And that is one of the concerns that I think I had, because I know I've said this before, and it seems to be a unpopular position, but ignoring any in-game stuff, Sword is a good CSM member. He shows up, he participates, he cares, he talks, he has ideas, he's willing to listen. I think the two folks on the CSM that I spent the most time talking to and working with last year were Merc and Sort. So if Sort does not get on this time, I think that's a shame. I think he brings a lot to the table. But because of what happened with Slice, because of what happened with Horde and NC Dot and PanFam, a lot of his base of support was eroded. I asked, make sure he got on the init. Or I was trying to get him on the init underdog ballot, although we didn't push that hard, because I would like to get him on there. But we'll see. Hopefully, Sort's a smart guy. He knows what he needs to do to get elected. I'm hoping that he'll have enough support from his Chinese and Russian folks within Darkness and within other groups to get.
He's not a normal campaigner. He doesn't actually go out and campaign, and I don't even think
his is all behind the scenes.
Ballot. Yeah, he does it all behind the scenes. And he talks to Russians who he's friendly with, and he talks to whoever's friendly with him. I don't know who it is lately. And he also appears on the Imperium ballot, but relatively low, right? Behind the judge.
Yeah, I think, like I said, anything below basically number 4 on the Imperium ballot is really just an endorsement. And that's why you see guys like Mike or not Mike, but like Steve and Sort and Billy and them on there. They don't need the votes, or they're not going to get any votes. But it's nice to see that they're on there and tell the folks, hey, oh yeah, we like this guy. That's how I was when I was on. I was number 5. It was just an attaboy vote of confidence thing.
Right. All right. So, Dirk, do you have any reporting coming in from the south of the map?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to say that based on the exit polling coming out of the Delve metropolitan area, Talking in Stations is going to make a call right now. Okay, that Aerith, Anominate, and Merkel Chen have been elected to the Council of Stellar Management 14, and it is
with 0% of precincts reporting. We can confidently state.
And this is not plus or minus 100% margin of error.
Really? Wait.
Literally 100%.
So you're actually calling that all 3 of their candidates will get on?
Yeah, that confuses me too. Nominate?
No, I look, guys.
They'll get 2, but
unless there's a huge number of nullsec votes, like 40,000 or something, and only 6,000 goons vote again, then I think they're going to get 3 on. But that was one of the things I got frustrated with last time. The whole concept, this is the GSM because Judge made it and I made it. No, it wasn't because of the Imperium ballot. That was because Judge bought votes because he's smart, and I ran a campaign. And that's that's how we got 5 guys on there at the beginning. There was no other way around it.
Also, I think that softness in the 3rd position that a nominate has is a little worrisome to the Imperium, because they actually traded Test, if I'm not mistaken. Their rental group had him at number 5. Or what? Sorry, was it Test that had him at number 5? Innominate.
It's correct, I believe.
Yeah. It was Test. Yeah.
So that might actually end up being valuable because, for example, let's say I get in and Dunk get in, so it's our 1 and our 3, and let's say Cornac doesn't get the votes. So then there is possibly some votes that could trickle there, right? So anything could happen. But
Billy's absolutely
as
right.
we've
I mean, to Billy's point, he's absolutely correct. And that's one of the things that I think people need to realize with this STV. It's not enough to get on a lot of ballots. You have to have sufficient numbers of first round votes to withstand enough rounds that you get the trickle down. And a nominate will have enough. The question is, will Cornac? So that's going to be the hard.
I mean, I didn't mention Judge there, okay, but I've got a big asterisk next to him over here, because if he does buy his base, okay, which I'm just going under the hearsay that he did last year, right? Or if he thought that somehow or things were going to be softer this year or harder, and he ended up buying more, right? I've got a big asterisk, that's questioning whether or not he can slip in again. I don't think he's going to get more trickle down than he did last year from the Imperium, unless they really kick it into just another level, which is I'm not saying is not possible, but he's down there, I think, with an asterisk, and is, at least as a player in this. If he really wanted it enough, I think he's got to spend again. I don't think he comes with his own natural base to be able to, 1,000 vote him into the later rounds.
Yeah, basically, unless you are Merkelchin or a nominate, you need to get you need to be able to have 1,000 votes, first place votes, at the start on your own. The goon ballot is its own special thing. Everybody else needs 1,000 votes straight up, and they really need to have a path to 2,000 votes.
Right.
All right, I'm feeling it.
And I'll be honest, I'm a little sad about it. Olmeca was giving me a hard time on Twitter today, but the fact is, regardless of what you think about the judge personally, he's been a great CSM member. From my experience working with him, he knows everybody at CCP. He has close relationships with everybody at CCP. He was able to get better information and get good back channel stuff to those guys when we needed to on a ton of important game stuff that benefited the entire game. He's the kind of guy you need on there, even if he's not somebody that you see visibly, and even if he's not the kind of guy that people tend to like because of stuff he's done in game. He's in the same boat, in my opinion, as Sort. Leave the nullsec politics and the in-game stuff out and look at it from what they've done on the CSM. They're both very solid people.
Okay, so let's just do a quick review. It looks like we have Aerith, Gobbins, Killaby, possibly, Villy, for sure, Dunk Dinkle. How certain are we on the reporting coming out of Catch?
Dunk's got it. I'm not concerned. I'm pretty sure he's.
I would be absolutely shocked. I mean, look, the 6 shoe-ins that I've got here are Aerith, Merkelchin, and Nominate, Gobbins, Villy, Dunk. From there, I go into a different. I then have a Steve Renukin, okay, who's another level down, and then my question marks are really Killaby and Sort Dragon, whether or not the politics have changed to such an extent this year for both of them, and where they're kind of picking up where the changes are have come from and all of that, right?
Something new this year. Pandemic Legion puts out a ballot for the first time. How does that help, Killaby? I'm not actually sure who's on it.
I mean, it depends on who voted. I can pull it up.
If somebody can pull it up,
it depends on who, how many of them actually bothered to vote, and unless you're out there whipping the votes.
Let's face it, I think Olmeca has hit a nerve with Northern voters in that he's somebody that's putting a punishment on the Goon Swarm and the Imperium that the North can't do at this moment. And so he's kind of a favorite for them. How much will he peel off of Killaby and other popular Northerners?
What do you mean, because of what he's doing in game? Will they go vote for him?
Because of what he represents.
I don't know.
I mean, so it looks like the PL ballot that I have is B1, Gobbins 2, U, Matterall number 3, Olmeca number 4, Arqui 5, Steve Renukin 6, Blazing Bunny 7, Dunk 8, Matthew Dust 9, and Carbon Alabel 10. It depends on if they show up. I mean, it depends on if they vote. I don't think they've ever really been a factor before, so we'll see whether or not it matters this time. In terms of Olmeca, I think he'll tell you flat out if you ask him. The nullsec tribalism is the biggest problem. And
hold on one second. Let's actually introduce this properly. Now the For the candidates that could possibly fit into the second half of the CSM, this is where the race really is. And let's start with the biggest dark horse, and that is Olmeca Gold, who's come out of relative obscurity and really dazzled people with a video that shows his skills. He's campaigned really, really hard. He's been all over TIS. He's been all over Reddit. He's taken on every question that's thrown at him. What do
No,
you
he
guys think of
hasn't.
him?
He hasn't answered any of the taco questions in the chat. That's bullshit.
What's a taco
Answer the
question?
taco. Do it, Olmeca. You know you want. I'm sorry. I'm making jokes.
I don't know
Keep
what the
going,
taco
Matt.
question is, but yeah. So there's Olmeca Gold. He is the elephant in the room when we talk about CSM. What do we think?
Like I said, I think it's all going to depend on how many first ballot votes he can get. And I know between him and Marshy, he has 200 or 300 folks votes just from his alt accounts. So that gets him a third of the way there. Does he have another 600 or 700 that'll get him to the 1,000 that he's going to need to make it down past the first 10 or 15 rounds? I don't know.
My guess is no. To be the realist in the room.
Let's hear it.
I mean, he's got the Reddit love, which is good, and he's got a strong, solid base from the kind of the whaling community, I guess. But that's a small community, and Reddit is notoriously fickle and heavy on the virtue signaling. Oh yeah, that's great, but oh, I have to actually log in to vote. That takes 10 minutes. I don't know if I want to do that. Like, yeah, and I think Omeka would be a good candidate, to be honest. It's just like not necessarily that I want to have to sit there and argue with him for days, but I think he'd be okay to do it. And he's interested and he's determined and he's got opinions, but I just don't know if the votes are there. It's a lot of votes you need, and it's going to be hard to see.
Wrong kind of voters, basically.
Well, I agree with Billy. What I would say is the biggest problem. Personally, Omeka and I, we go back and forth. Generally, he's all right. He's not that bad a guy. He's frustrating to me quite a bit, and I think he operates under a lot of assumptions that are poor. And then he takes those assumptions and runs with them like they're facts, even though they're just his opinion. But as a candidate, he's done what he needs to do. And I mean, here's the thing: generally speaking, the last couple of CSMs, there's always going to be one meme candidate. And I think this year, if you got to look in who all the folks that are out there, Olmeca's the meme candidate. That's not a disparaging thing. I was the meme candidate last year. And I know Dirk gets upset when I say that, but the fact is, I was a nobody. I was a line member. I came in. I ran a good campaign. I had a funny commercial. People liked me. I was the meme guy. Zenario, when he ran, was the meme guy. He was the crazy guy doing funny videos on YouTube, and Imperium put them at the top of their ballot because they were trying to play a game. He was the meme candidate. He won. Olmeca, if he gets enough votes from high-sec people and random folks who liked his video, and his video has almost as many, if not more, views on it than mine does, and it's been out less than half the time. He could potentially, get enough votes to get enough rounds where some of the trickle down from being on PL's ballot and other people's ballots might get to him. It's tough. I don't know if it's possible. And unlike me, at least in my opinion, he's more abrasive than I am. I tend to do everything with tongue in cheek, and I don't know how well that goes with folks. So I don't know how many people that say, "Oh, you got my votes," actually showed up and vote. We'll find out. But I think to Villy's point, I think if there is a meme candidate that wins this year, it'll be him. But I still think that's a pretty steep hill to climb.
I mean, and again, I don't think that you were a meme candidate last year. I don't necessarily think that Olmeca is a meme candidate this year. I think that he has done the things to get name recognition out there in a number of ways. I also think that there's the potential that he could, in some of those cases, be somewhat of a protest vote, for some of those people who are looking to be disruptive, the anti-establishment candidate, so to speak.
I agree with that. It's important to note, though, like as much as Brisk was talking about kind of the meme candidate quality, Olmeca is very decisive. There's a lot of people in Nullsec who enjoy the memes, and they're like, "Oh, I'll vote for the meme candidate. This is hilarious. This guy's awesome." And I'm sure Brisk got a lot of votes that were never counted for last year from Nullsec candidates who didn't vote for their block and voted for Brisk because they're like, "This guy's hilarious. I love this guy. This guy sounds awesome. Yeah, hell yeah, this guy." But in this situation, you're going to have a lot of those voters who are going to be like, "I'm not fucking touching that with a 10-foot," because a lot of what he says is so divisive, and it's very hard for people to get on board with that.
I agree with that. I mean, it was funny because I was talking to Merck and some of the Imperium guys, and they had actually considered putting Olmeca on the Imperium ballot because it would have been funny. But he can't take a joke, and just the stuff he kept saying over and over again. He talked himself off of even being the meme on the Imperium ballot. So it's sometimes it's very easy to talk yourself out of a yes vote by keeping talking, and I think it's to a certain extent he did that with some folks. So I think Billy's spot on.
Okay, so Olmeca is in the crowd there, and he is saying anti-establishment is a much better definition that he likes. That is exactly what he thinks he is, anti-establishment.
Well, of course
There's no
you'd like that more than meme candidate. I mean,
well,
like,
yeah, obviously, because but there's no establishment here, and one of the problems that I have with him, like I told him this earlier, but in general, but here's the thing: you got to take these candidates out of nullsec politics and look at them as candidates and what they bring to the table. I didn't vote for Billy because he's a test guy and we're aligned with test now. I vote for Billy because he is an FC. He's been around a long time. He does the shows. I trust his judgment. I think he's a good dude. That's why I voted for him, not because he's blue to the Imperium. To the same reason. I voted for you, Matterall. And even though a lot of folks in the Imperium hate your guts, but I like you and I met you and we've had good conversations and I think you're a pretty good guy. Same with Dunk. Dunk is blue to us. I didn't vote for him because he's in Brave. I voted for him because he's Dunk. So a lot of people, if they can't leave the nullsec politics and the group stuff out of it and vote for folks based on either what that person says or what they like about them or whether they think they've got a good enough judgment to run, I think that's unfortunate.
Is anyone distorting? Because he just pulled a Nancy Pelosi on me where he sounded drunk.
I was drinking, but it was coffee.
No, I think your voice slowed. Okay, wasn't. All right.
That was you intentionally slowing him down by a bit to make him sound that way.
It's me. Yeah, exact. Deep fake. All right. So reporting from, well, we don't know what region because he's come out of Wormhole space. It looks like overwhelming support for Exuki from Wormhole community. He's the only one registering with a lot of support. His rivals in the Wormhole community are not registering on our poll very well.
Correct.
And he is doing very well.
Look, I'm going to say this. All right. This is, the whole Wormhole situation is complete freaking dark horse. Not the fact that Exuki on our exit polls, is showing kind of as high as he is, right? Because I think that, maybe there's some bias in terms of the people that are related to talking in stations and things along those lines. The people that really saw this exit poll that we tried to put out there fairly widely, as far as I know. I think that there's something in there. But the whole Wormhole situation itself is going to come down to can they put their fractioned or their factional kind of internal politics aside to get a wormholer on there. God, I hope so, because if they can't this year after what happened last year, I don't know where they go to from here, because Exuki, is one of the guys that really did try to kind of, bring it together, right? They had a Discord out there. They were talking about this, amongst, leaders from different factions and things. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to show you a campaign video while we take a break. And then we'll come back with some statistics on what we collected as part of Talking in Station's exit polls. Let's see if we can see, and this is in context of a campaign from me, Matterall. Somebody decided that he needed to protect high-sec voters and say that Matterall could not be elected because he was vote trading, and he thought that was terrible, and that it would create kingmakers. And then at the end of the video, he said he'll produce a list so that people could vote with his list, such as a kingmaker would do. So let's go ahead and roll that video. We'll be back in just about 2 minutes. We'll let you watch this video. All right, welcome back.
Matterall, thanks for showing us a completely shitty video of people making fun of you. Thank you. That was you.
Didn't know it was that long, first of all. And second of all, it had inappropriate stuff that I didn't know was in there either. we'll delete that as soon as we can.
You got to watch the attack ads against you. They're fun. That's the most fun part.
I did, but I think I was looking at something else, but I listened to the whole thing. So that was an attack ad towards me from somebody who thought that ballot trading was a bad idea, and that if I ballot traded as a non-block candidate, then it would set a precedent that non-block candidates would only ballot trade in order to get on, which I don't even know how to take that. It's kind of like if you elect Matterall, something that's already happened is going to happen again. And that's just really strange to me.
Here's the deal. There it is. Okay.
Is it Reddit logic?
Any way that you can win that does not involve cheating is okay. Period. If you got to buy votes, if you got to be in a null block, if you got to call everybody around and make sure that they show up, it's all fine. If you got to trade votes, that's fine. Winning requires people to do stuff like that. So I like Shipwreck Jones. I like his stuff. He makes me laugh, and he and I have talked quite a bit over email over the last year. But that's not a fair criticism. You got to do what you got to do to get elected.
All right, so let's talk about this middle tier that we're looking at. And what we did is we asked people out there inside of Talking in Stations and beyond if they wouldn't mind filling out anonymously who they voted for, so that we could have some statistics to collect. And let's talk about the groups that we actually worked with. We have some demographic information on them.
Oh, by the way, before anybody cuts and pastes that last comment that I made, I'm talking about buying votes in EVE, not real life. So don't use this in an attack against me next year.
Oh, did you just announce?
Setting it up.
I didn't announce anything.
Did you just announce?
I just said.
Oh my God.
I just said.
Oh my God, Brisk, are you running for president of the United States?
I am not running for president.
It's a good year.
I don't even know if actually paying cash for votes is somehow it's not in game. Therefore, does it apply to the EULA? I mean,
Be good.
I don't know.
Happens in real life all the time. All right, let's take it.
But I just do want I do want to quick go back to something. We should say that in our polling, right? Olmeca was showing strong in that. That's one of the reasons why Olmeca's name is kind of coming up here, because it could very well be that that he is one of those dark horse candidates out there. So don't throw away hope there, Olmeca.
All right. Now that being said, Matterall, can you go through some of the I guess we would call them the crosstabs for the poll here, the exit poll that you.
Sure, we'll get McLeod if you could put these first few graphics up. This is the demographic information that was voluntary from people anonymously. Not everybody that gave this information also gave us their voting information, but just to show you kind of what the sample group looks like. And I'll wait for McLeod to do that, but the majority, 50%.
Which one do you want, dude?
Let's go with where do you spend most of your game time?
Okay. There we go. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, McLeod, for not muting us.
How long has it been out?
I think we went a while. All right.
It was It was basically since when I changed to the actual statistics.
I'm pretty sure people thought the audio was better when it was out than when it was on.
Maybe. Yeah. But okay, so most of the people that submitted, we have 187, basically 180 people polled. That's not accounts, that's people. Respondents. Thank you. And the majority of them were from where?
From Nullsec, which is exactly what Dirk and I were saying when you couldn't hear us, which is basically the problem with this exit poll in general is it oversamples Nullsec voters. And part of the problem is, and this is a general problem that we have in EVE about everything, whether it's talking to people, whether it's CSM voting or whatever. A lot of casual players don't care about any EVE media. They don't read the forums. They don't read Reddit. They don't watch talking stations. They don't watch open comms. They don't watch the meta show. They are simply guys that play the game, log in. They don't vote, and that's it. And that's a ton of people. And the folks that do care about the game and are really invested heavily tend to be folks like us who are all in Nullsec. So every time we do one of these polls, it's going to oversample Nullsec voters, and there's just no way around it, especially in one like this, which is not scientific and was based solely around folks who are willing to take the time to tell people how they voted. I didn't even respond to this because I couldn't remember how I voted half the folks on my ballot because I just did it the first day and that was it. So, I mean, that's
okay.
You got to take this at face value.
Yeah, so this is just for fun, guys. This is probably not going to be too accurate, but of all the people that we sampled, we asked them how many accounts that they have that they voted with, and the average was 6 accounts. So some people voted with many more than that, and some people voted with 1 account.
Well, that's because 53% was from Nullsec. 70% was Nullsec plus Wormhole, right? So these are going to generally be players that have more than 1 account.
Right, and well, let me get the actual statistics on this fixed up because we asked them also how long they had played the game. And on average, interestingly enough, it was 6 years. And so there's some people that are 10, 11, 13 years. And there's a lot of people who were 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. So the average play time for these guys has been 6 years. Well, we have to see what the correlations are between years and the amount of accounts that they have. We'll check that out. Okay, so let's go through who they actually... one last thing is we asked them what kind of game style they like to play. And instead of saying, do you like to play Nullsec or Lowsec or whatever, we said, what kind of gameplay do you prefer? Exciting, social, immersive, relaxing, solo. And so we got some respondents for that. I don't know if you can see that one up. Right.
And that was a multiple answer one, right? You could select more than one. And
that's right. So somebody who selected immersive could also select exciting, but this is kind of the kind of weight that certain types of gameplay have. And we would associate exciting with like PvP or that kind of stuff. Or
would we?
PvE.
I don't know.
I think so. I don't think there's any PvP.
One man's exciting is another man's relaxing.
Well, that's the thing. I was about to say, what kind of game are these guys playing that find this game relaxing? I find nothing about this game relaxing. I mean, mining is relaxing? Okay, wait till Olmeca spearfishes your fucking excavators and then see how relaxed you are.
Noisy's relaxed. There's a whole lot of relaxed people out there. Ratting's relaxing.
This game gives me ulcers. It doesn't make it.
Killing Keepstars this past week has been relaxing as hell. I mean, granted, it's been at like 4:00 in the morning, but
Yeah, that wasn't.
But
anyway, to each their own.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who enjoy the game solo, which I thought was very interesting. Like, there's 25% of respondents actually, that's a lot. It's 40 people out of this sample group, which is a lot if you think about it, actually prefer to kind of spend time alone. Maybe Noisy Gamer is one of those.
Hey, mining in Lowsec is relaxing. Not as relaxing as exploration in Lowsec, but it's okay.
All right, so we thought that was interesting. again, average 6 accounts, average 6 years. Now let's look at who they voted for in this election. Should we actually just put all the numbers up, or?
Well, put up the graph or whatever we had, because the raw numbers are hard on.
Oh yeah, you don't want that raw file.
Okay. Can we put up that middle tier that's right above these two graphics, McLeod?
Dude, we don't have any pie charts, LB. Sorry.
Sorry,
No,
which one do you want specifically?
That one there.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
McLeod, you're blowing it, man. You're making Drayden look good tonight. This is not.
No, he's getting. This is unfair to McLeod. He's getting super surprised on what we're dropping on him.
I just got to tease him,
so
because
this
I
is
always
the
tell
middle
Drayden that
section.
McLeod's better than.
So here's the middle section. This requires some explanation. First of all, it's a very unscientific poll. Second of all, it's a very small sample group from the people who actually voted. Thirdly, none of this matters, because Saturday you're going to find out who the real winners are. And we've already discounted a lot of Nullsec players like Aerith, Gobbins, Killabee, Villy, and Dunk, who are probably going to get on based on the power of their voting blocks. So these are Talking in Stations respondents that responded to this poll. And if you can see, it's going to be heavily biased and weighted towards me. So you can just take me out of that first slot there.
I don't know.
After we make fun of you for it.
This is literally an attempt at at exit polling, and there were a lot of people out there that were saying, that they voted you number one. I mean, second only to Aerith in the poll. I think that says I think it's a tight race between you and Aerith.
Oh yeah, I'm worried. Aerith may not have the numbers, because Matterall's coming in right there up the top. Matterall, is it true that you have all of their IP addresses?
No, there's no IP addresses. I don't want to actually explain how we keep people from duplicating, but there's a process to keep duplicates. So if somebody does it once, they can't do it again. So
are we sure there was no Russian collusion in this exit poll? Can we be sure of that?
No data. All right. So when we look at this, we see Exuki is very strong among TIS respondents, with a respectable 5% of the overall. That's all the people that were voted in their first choice. And he's tied with Olmeca Gold. And that tells me that both those candidates have some power behind them.
Well, what you don't realize is that 80 of those were Olmeca himself. So there
were some whale voters, yes. We eliminated the outlandish ones, like 32,000 votes for this person, that person. And we did kind of normalize it to look at what looked right and what didn't look right. I'm also surprised at the strength that Zanuria has there, 37 votes.
Those are also his counts.
I don't know. Like, as much as Zanuria is kind of a dark horse in this election, from what I've heard, he was a capable candidate, and he does have some goon support that shouldn't be necessarily discounted.
I love Zanuria. I laugh. He makes me laugh, and he's a good friend.
Yeah, he seems like a really good guy, and I think it would be, obviously if he's not in the top 3 of the goon ticket, he's not a shoo-in by any means. Who is the number 4 in the goon ticket?
The judge.
Judge is number 4.
Judge is number 4.
Again.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I know that that's the thing. Why is Judge not on this list? I know he had more than 12 freaking people in TIS Discord vote for him. So I know I voted for him. So I know that.
Let's bring out the full
obviously,
list.
Since I didn't reply, it didn't matter.
We'll bring out the full list in just a second. But I also wanted to point out a couple other things. Mike Azaria has strong support among people who are around, who did this at 2.6%, which is pretty good. That's a significant drop from Exuki and Olmeca, but that's still above Zanuria, which is kind of interesting. And what's interesting to me below that is Sort Dragon and Steve Renukin and Skitch. Here is the actual numbers that we collected.
3.
All precincts reporting.
Like 100% of precincts are in.
I don't. But I mean, look, I'm happy that Exuki's that high up, because I'm concerned about him. I mean, that's why we put him number 2 on the Init underdog ballot, because we were hoping that if some of our guys didn't want to vote straight Imperium, which I think a lot of them did, that they would at least maybe give some of these guys that have a potential shot but are not as organized a chance to get on here. So hopefully this means that Exuki had more support than we were expecting.
Yeah, and this is, again, there are a lot of Wormhole fans that watch Targeting Stations because he has a show on Targeting Station, so it could be a little bit slanted in that way as well. But I do think he's solidified support among Wormhole groups for the most part. They're very, very individualized groups.
All right, and for the folks that are freaking out, the reason why the numbers didn't have Aerith and Gobbins and Killaby and everything else on the other sheet that we had up was because we took out all the shoo-ins. So Aerith's already going to win. Gobbin's going to win. B's probably going to win. Billy's going to win. Nom's going to win. Dunk's going to win. Merc's going to win. So we don't have to put them on there because we already know that. So of all the folks that are in that middle, that's the ones we brought up.
You guys keep saying several people are going to be in that. For example, I've heard multiple times in the show tonight that Killaby is guaranteed in.
I don't think he's guaranteed.
I don't think he's guaranteed.
Far more. Yeah, I think Sword Dragon is far more of a guaranteed candidate than Killaby is by like a factor of at least 2.
Really?
I agree with. I do. I agree with that.
Why do you say that?
Well, Sword Dragon has a whole large coalition voting for him as a primary candidate. Killaby has NC Dot and PL. Does he even have both of those?
And they don't really vote anyway.
Which are low. Like they keep trying to remind us, as their enemy. There are so few accounts, so few players, right? So somebody made the point that GOTG is smaller than NCPL, but when you add in Ranger Regiment, when you add in Siberian Squad, when you add in all of the people that Sword works with, I think you will be very surprised to find that Sword is much more likely to be in the Killaby.
I agree with Billy 100%.
Oh, that is very interesting. Yeah, I would not have thought that.
And for the record, and I told Matterall this before, and I told Sort this before, for the guys who are looking at the poll and they're concerned about this and everything like that, guys, this poll is dog shit. Okay, it's not.
No,
it's
not that.
It's
bad.
not. This is something for us to talk about, but the reality is, it's a microcosm of self-reported stuff. But the only group that would look at this and actually call races based on this is like CNN. Nobody reputable would do that, so don't worry about it.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's worse than dog shit.
Yeah, I actually made a little one of my famous paint pictures of how I believe the election is likely to go. And I actually came up with some interesting questions when I did it, which was an interesting little exercise.
Let's hear it.
In my little shitty paint picture. I don't everyone seems to think that the third goon candidate is lock, and that's probably true, but I don't think that's 100% lock. I think it's like a 95, 90% whatever, which is the same as Dunk and the same as Sword, I think. But the really interesting question is if you assume Sort, Dunk, and Inam are all in, that leaves 3 spots. That's it, and you've got 9 realistic candidates that can fit in those 3 slots.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. I'm looking at this here, and I see Aerith, Merc, Inam, Villy, Dunk, Gobbins. I think are the ones that are solid, and I think anybody and potentially Sort as number 7, and then you got basically 3 slots, and then who do they go to? So I mean, that's the thing. I've said this from the beginning. I think there is a very, very good chance that this could be the first all Nullsec or 9-1 Nullsec, CSM. It's entirely possible based on the candidates and the blocks that have the power.
It could very well be a 10-0. As crazy as that sounds.
Steve may not make it.
I think Steve is able to. Yeah, I think that he is able to get in there enough over whoever might be that 10th Nullsec. I'm not even sure. Yeah.
Wow, this is a nightmare scenario for me because Killaby can get knocked out and I could get knocked out and Vince will kick my butt. He'll say,
"It's not your fault. It won't be your fault."
Yeah.
It won't be your fault. It won't be burning. It won't be Bunny's fault. It's not going to be anybody's fault. It's
look for the demise.
Who is number 2 on the Horde ticket?
I think it's Killaby. Let me check.
Yeah, it's B. Gobbins is number 1, P is second. You're number 3, I think.
That's a strong second.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that probably means that Kilo's got that 8 slot. So realistically, then, yeah. I mean, that's
This is what happens when you have a large number of solid nullsec candidates with blocks behind them running. You know, and that was the fact that you ran Billy, the fact that Gobbins was in there. That's 2 seats that are definitely gone. You know, and this time around, you didn't have the strong independent candidates like Jin, like Sutonia, that in the past were able to get on there. So without those guys, those seats are going to go to nullsecers because we're organized.
Well, by default, we are organized.
Correct.
Right. Matterall, can you explain the 1,672 number down at the bottom of that list?
Yes, that's how many. Actually, let's put that graphic up. We haven't put it up there yet, I don't think. That is how many accounts were reported. The poll asks a person to say who they voted for, but then also say how many accounts they applied to that voting pattern. And so some people would have only one account that voted that way, but other people would have 32, other people have 64. And so that's why you have a total that's much larger.
So, but that doesn't tell us what, that doesn't add up on this.
Yeah, it's what.
Yeah. Oh, that must be off. Let me fix the math on that.
Yeah, your math is off here, my friend. Which goes back to my whole "this is dog shit."
Yeah, even your percentages are off. Who the hell made this? Like, do you have any production standards here? Like, holy shit!
It's powered by Apple, so don't worry, guys.
See, we were never supposed to show the numbers. We were just supposed to talk about them.
We just make shit up. That's all this is. We just made things.
I told you to quadruple everything to make it sound like better participation rates were generated. Because the terrible thing about the graphics.
You guys were showing a shitty paint picture like 5 seconds ago.
That was actually pretty good.
That was yours. That was
yours, right?
It literally does show that we can't even ask people to, come on, help us out here. Let's see what we can get together. And we get 178 responses or something like that. Even though we threw it out to Tweetfleet, we threw it out. I believe it went out to Reddit. We certainly threw it out in a Discord multiple times that has got 2,000 people in it. 2,000. And it's kind of like. We get 178 responses. This is only as good as you people make it. And like pretty much all of our elections, it is the way it is.
I see why. The number...
For Init, we would call this Finchy Intel. For Karma Fleet, we would say you guys have eagle eyes. So
I see what went wrong. Hold on.
It's totally Finchy Intel.
Yeah. Honestly, this would not surprise me at all if this was a 10-0 nullsec ballot.
I would not be surprised either.
The last two will be.
I could see Judge. I could see Judge and Sort taking the last 2 slots, and there you go. And even if you get on there, Matterall, then you're a nullsec candidate too.
I don't represent anything that. In fact, I'd be an anti-nullsec candidate.
So if I
fly in nullsec, you want to Titan. That you're going to be painted as a nullsec candidate, just like I was, even though I went the same route and said I'm here to represent everybody in all places. They're going to call you a nullsec candidate.
Yeah, you're a nullsec
just like
candidate.
People told me I was voted on because
to
of the Imperium
dark
ballot,
side.
even though I got no votes from the Imperium ballot. So it's just it's reality, and what people say, just like in real life, usually have nothing to do with it.
Perception is reality, Brisk, right?
That's what they tell me.
You're perceived to be a nullsec candidate, so that's what you are, even though you say that you're not.
Serious question. Do we think, because for this to go 10-0 nullsec, right? That means Steve does not make it on. Do we think in any possible world that we have seen over the last few years, right, that Judge can outpace Steve?
I think it's entirely possible. I mean,
just based on last year's results, you think his results get better this year?
I think Judge's results probably get better this year because he's still got the same folks that he talked to last year, potentially. And then I know that he was number 2 on Sort's Russian and Chinese ballot. He's number 3 on the Darkness English ballot. So he's got enough support, plus being number 4 in Imperium. If we have enough voters this time around to get more trickle down, and I think we probably will, then I think he's going to have a solid shot. I am less concerned now that I think about it in more detail than I was, last Friday when we were talking about this. I think he's got a solid chance. I think, like I said, I think Villy's point about sort is 100% true. So you throw all those guys in there, assuming all the incumbents that are running get reelected, then you've got what, 4 slots left, and they're going to go to Cobbins and Dunk and Villy, and then maybe one other person.
I mean that would be a big shift from last year. I mean, last year Steve Rnukin pulled 1,546 first round ballots, and the judge pulled 1,080, with the rumor being that he bought 1,000.
Complacency is a dangerous thing, though, and just because you had the votes last year does not mean you had the votes this year.
Although
and the Nullsec
right.
turnout
That's
is going to
absolutely
be
true.
significantly more pushed this year than it was previous years. I know that one.
Okay, he's saying he didn't buy 1,000 last year. Okay, so how many did you buy? I mean, because I am legitimately trying to understand the bases here. Okay, because Steve becomes a bucket candidate for a bunch of people out there who, after they've gotten through voting for whoever, right? Steve ends up, well, number one, he picks up his own votes just purely, and then he builds on other people where their votes begin to expire because they were voting for kind of lower ranked people.
Judge says he bought like 400
something. Okay, so that's solid then.
Yeah, 400. That sounds, well, of course, he's the one that said it, so that sounds right. I could say.
Sounds legit.
Okay.
Like,
it's kind of, I'm willing to accept 400. Okay, so fine. Yeah. If he bought 400 of those, right, then that means he brought 600 in, just as, kind of his base, right? His base of actual voters. Yeah, I don't know. See, again, Steve is kind of that, that sort of that bucket candidate for high seckers and other ones to kind of say, okay, after I've tried to vote for these people here, I'll vote for Steve, because he does pick him up later on. Like, he legitimately got on last year as opposed to being a last man standing.
How worried should Exuki be from Wormhole space?
I don't think he should get his hopes up at all.
I think he should be worried. I think he's going to the same thing that happened last year has potential for happening this year. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I've been asking. I mean, obviously, I left the Praise Bob server a while ago. They don't like me, so I wasn't going to sit there and take the abuse. So I haven't seen what they're talking about. But I've been talking to some other folks and some of the folks in TIS that are Wormhole candidates. And I told them how to do it. I told them what they needed to do. Obviously, me saying that is a guarantee that they'll do the opposite just to spite me. So I'm concerned that they did the same thing they did last year, which is that they are going to split their votes between candidates and not fill out their whole ballots, and that's going to result in them not having enough votes.
Let's put up that clean list if we can, McLeod. Just want to go back to it for a second. I think Exuki gets on.
You mean the one that's incorrect?
No, there's another one at the.
Oh, you put a new one. Okay.
It's the one where Aerith has over 9,000 votes.
There we go.
That's the right one.
Yeah.
I'm going to be blunt.
Matterall, did you come in first on this because you loaded gold ammo into that spreadsheet? Is that?
Yes, I'm shooting gold blanks. Well, Billy was about to go. He's about to go bold.
I'm going to be blunt. I think there's a less than 10% chance Exuki makes it.
There we go.
Thanks. All right, let's look at that. Those are the raw numbers and the correct total. And the correct percentages based on that total.
Yeah, so that final one was just inflated because of, account number, multipliers, right?
What's not counted here, obviously, or maybe there's a little bit of overlap, tiny bit, is the 2,000-3,000 votes that came in for, or I suspect would go for the big blocks, right? So Villy here is going to have thousands of votes from his people. Gobbins is going to have thousands of votes. Clearly, Aerith and Merkelchen, who doesn't register high on this, will have thousands of votes. So that's what blows it up. This is just voluntary information from people who decided to do this stuff. I don't know. I think that I'm hoping. I think Olmeca and Exuki might get on, and maybe Steve Rnukin. I don't know how strong he is outside of. He has his channels. I'm sure that he's very strong in.
industrialists have a tendency of having lots of accounts, and industrialists like Steve, so he's got
Yeah.
that base.
That's a very good point. One person can outweigh an entire corporation or even alliance, a small alliance, just by the nature of how many accounts they have, which is kind of a screwy thing. This is supposed to be democratic, but it's not one vote, one person. It's one vote, one account.
You know, as much as you probably don't want to hear this, if you only got 117 votes out of the TIS poll, that doesn't bode well for you.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not getting on. I've made peace with that. Like, there's no way I'm getting on.
I don't know, man.
I
It's
do
a strong
know.
showing.
All my strength. This is my stronghold, and I'm like dropping the bucket. So I don't know. And it really, I think for me to get on would be an absolute shocker, because I don't feel like I think people are like, yeah, we like him where he is, but we don't want him on CSM because, he's, first of all, he'll stop doing the show or something. And second of all, he's not the right material for CSM, which I totally disagree with, by the way.
I think you took a really negative PR hit early on, and it didn't give you any chance to build up some momentum. It'd probably be the biggest thing I would say about your.
I think that's part of it. I think that's through a prism of like what most null voters were looking for. But I think the guys that weren't going to vote for me just jumped on that and loved it, because they were never going to vote for me either. I think the thinking man who listened to the stuff that I had to say, those guys were possibly my voters, and they possibly may have turned out for me. But I honestly don't think so. I don't know if there's enough of them, even if they did all turn out.
Well, I mean, one of the things I said to you during the thing, right, was or even during the lead up to it, right, was the people that like you, and what you do in terms of talking in stations and things like that. These are people who are also affiliated a lot of the time with other big groups out there and things. And the question would be, can you strip them away from voting for their FC, or voting for their alliance leader, or voting for, high profile people that they work with every day or they deal with every day, kind of a thing, to be able to vote for you? And I said, I thought that was going to be a tough pull, quite honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a split loyalties, but I think when it comes down to it, and I think it's irrational. It's not irrational, but it's unreasonable to create a CSM that's based basically on players telling the company what direction they want the game to, and then leave that up for grabs by the most organized groups that play the same game play. So now you have basically a monolithic group. Say null sweeps 10-0. That's going to be a hell of a one-sided point of view for the rest of the game. I think that's unfortunate.
Maybe we need that. Maybe what we need is for that to happen, and maybe we need some people to go on there and also be highly disruptive or something like that. For CCP.
Here's what I think happens.
Maybe think about it differently.
I don't think the people fix this. I don't, and I don't think the company fixes it either. I think the company ignores CSM. That's what I think happens, and they look for other media, other ways.
I don't think they ignore them. I don't think they ignore them. Okay, I don't think they ignore them any more than they already do. Okay,
right,
because again, I think that people give way too much credit to that the CSM is either too overly powerful and therefore dominated by nullsec interests that are too overly powerful. And then there's the other flip side of it, that CSM does, the CCP doesn't pay them any attention at all, and therefore the entire thing is worthless. It's somewhere in the middle.
Well, I mean, here's what I would say. I think the biggest problem is, to Dirk's point, is there are a lot of folks who think the CSM is useless. There are a lot of that think the CSM has way too much influence. The answer, as always, is somewhere in the middle. I think the CSM is most powerful when all 10 folks are in agreement on issues. And in general, we're good at lobbying and saying, hey, this is what the priorities need to be. That's where I think CCP listens the most. I think where they don't listen the most is when you tell them, here's my idea for fixing X. Here's my idea for fixing Y. I think, if you go that route, and I've said this with people before, and I mentioned it on Open Comms on Friday night, there is no idea that you can bring to the table as a player that CCP has not already thought of. They know, and they've thought of all of this stuff. They've gotten it from other people. They've got the feedback. And it's not a question of whether they want to do it or they can do it or anything like that. It's always a question of what the priorities are, where they put the resources. That's where CSM can help. and especially if the CSM is united behind the idea that we need to fix something. Like last CSM, and it's in the minutes. Number one for us was Vortex. We got to get it fixed, and I think with folks like Nominate and other people that have been campaigning and talking about that for long enough, you say that enough times, and you get a unanimous CSM saying that enough times. That tells you, all right, this is something we have to address, and that's how you get stuff done. But I mean, in general, you can't. People that go on there thinking I've got the best ideas, I should be on CSM. That's not the right way. That's not the right approach. Now, I'd like to say one other thing. While Matterall was doing his CSM14 exit poll, I went ahead and did a CSM15 exit poll. And if McLeod, if you can put that up on the screen, we can see the results of what the CSM15 exit poll is going to.
Ta-da!
Okay, so there you go. We can confidently say, based on this exit poll, that if Brisk runs in 2015 or 20 in CSM 15, I will get 100,000, almost 100,000 votes. That's scientific, people. That's
right
as good as this one. So there you go. It's mine for the take.
It's a fact. It's scientific.
I don't want to discredit the people who actually took the time to fill the stuff out. I think they did a great job. A vast majority of them were honest votes. There weren't people kind of trying to mess with it, and really appreciate that. So everybody that voted in this exit poll, we really appreciate it. It's a small sample group compared to the thousands of people that are in Discord, but I think it is telling somewhat. So we'll see. And,
here, and I want to be honest, right? And this is the only one that I'm aware of. Okay, there was somebody who answered none of the other questions other than who they voted for. I think it was first or something like that, and they said that they voted for Aerith with 658 accounts.
Yeah.
We pulled that out of there because I'm not saying in EVE Online and the bullshit stuff that goes on that there's not somebody out there with 650 Omega accounts. But yeah.
Even if we'd thrown that in, he's a shoo-in anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But it was on that, like, it's just a little bit too unbelievable. There are people who have accounts like that, they're farmers or whatever, but we decided to take that kind of stuff out. There's only like two or three of those.
There's way more than 2 or 3 of those, guys. I hate to break that one to you.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
No, there's 2 or 3 that filled this out. There's
all right.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
I know like 3 different people that represent like 800 votes. So it's like, and that's just in,
That's why I mean, it's not really democratic. Those guys are essentially kingmakers. I mean, one guy with 600 votes is basically, somebody that needs their ring kissed on their finger. So
every Omega is created equal.
is paid for equally.
Well, right. The reality is that as long as people keep paying for skill injectors, you're going to continue to see bot account farms like that to make skill harvest skill points. So,
and that's actually a big deal. I think that you have skill farmers that are meeting a demand for skill injectors. The injectors are used to basically propagate multiple alts that you can use in order to, in the right circumstances, get them into rorquals and make fortunes, turn those fortunes into multiple Titan pilots, and then injectors help you get into those, and all of a sudden you have a lopsided game. So it's an interesting problem. But if you want to I want to go back to.
I don't know if that's how I would describe skill injectors.
I wouldn't either.
I would. I mean, that's one of the thing that it's encapsulated
but that's like
money, right?
That's like the NC point of view. It's like, the downfall of us was the skill injectors. They injected the Rorquals, but then they got the Titans. It was all skill injectors. The skill injectors.
We've lost our advantage.
It was but it was a precipitating factor among other factors, right? I mean,
it was one small piece, but you got to think about how many tens of thousands of E-players were actually able to fly ships that they wanted to fly without having to wait 6 or 8 months in this game.
And how many players that would never have started playing EVE because they could never catch up with the old guys decided they were going to.
I'm not saying skill inject. I was for skill injectors and still am for skill injectors for that exact reason. I'm just saying they were part of the symptoms of what has looked like a lopsided game. But hold on, before we get there, we'll come back to that.
Matterall, he loves gold ammo. He hates skill injectors.
No, but that's what I want to talk about. If we'll get back to because Cheetah says like the gold ammo kind of took you out of it, right? It says the interview with the Jin was a car crash because you basically talked yourself out of every reason. Well, whatever. The point was that anybody who listened to that and said, yeah, I'm not going to vote for this guy, I don't think would ever voted for me anyway, because I honestly think that if you know my material, that was not a shock. I ask people to think, not just to react. And I don't think that's a shock to anybody who actually knows my material. Some people thought I should just sit back.
One of the very few things the community is united against is gold ammo. So I
don't
think
know what they're talking about, though.
They don't?
They don't know what they're talking about when they're against gold ammo. Like, what are we actually talking about?
Matterall, I hate to tell you this, but you are so far in the minority on this. You are in the minority of about 10 or 20. And not only in EVE Online, but in gaming in general. Okay. It is like, it's the biggest thing. If you want people to not play a game, tell them there's gold ammo in it.
Okay, now that your reaction is over, I want to, we're going to have this discussion. We're going to talk about what gold ammo actually means, what pay to win actually is, and what pay to have advantage exists in EVE Online, because I think that's an incredibly gray area that everybody thinks is solved by saying no gold ammo. And I'm saying, don't be dumb like that. Think about the issue in a deeper way. That's what I was saying.
But gold ammo is it's a code Excalibur, word. The representation of all evil when it comes to...
It's the same as saying loot boxes. Sure. I mean, people know what it is, and they know they don't like it, but if you start trying to define it like a lawyer, then, you lose everybody's bet.
Well, loot boxes are loot boxes, and they're the same in every game we talk about out there. Gold ammo...
They're actually not at all.
They're not.
Well, they're not.
They're not, Dirk. Come on.
You pay money for random chance at thing. I mean, isn't that just the basic definition of loot box?
Let me give you an example though, Dirk, just so it's clear. I play League of Legends. In League of Legends, you get a free loot box every, I don't know, let's say week if you're playing, or more. But in some games, the only way to get loot boxes, the only way to get those cool skins and that cool shit is to buy it.
Okay.
And there's a very clear difference in terms of what you can buy and what you can play to achieve.
Like PUBG.
Yes.
Well, fine. Play to achieve all gold ammo. Is that okay?
You would have to define what you mean. Because as soon as you use the word gold ammo, you can't by definition play to achieve gold ammo because it's gold ammo.
Okay, so ammo. Hold on a second. You have ammo that is worth 5 extra points of damage, whatever extra points of damage, and you can purchase that, and then you can actually earn that inside the game, either through the ISK market because it gets traded, or you can actually earn it through loot drops.
So exactly like Dreadgarista torpedoes that were basically unavailable to everyone in the game for the last...
Until they got added in loot boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
but the thing is,
I'm just
thing
saying
with
it exists. I don't know why people go crazy. It already exists.
That's not gold ammo.
That's not gold ammo.
That's gold ammo to me.
No, it's not. Matterall, the point of gold ammo, the reason why people don't like it, the same with the loot boxes. It's when the game requires you to purchase an object in order to compete. That's what people mean when they talk about gold ammo. That's what they mean when they talk about loot boxes being bad. Nobody gives a shit about cosmetics. Nobody gives a shit about stuff that you can trade within game is, because that ends up being there. But if the game requires that you purchase some object with real money, and if you do not do that, you will be permanently gimped compared to other players. That's what people hate, and that's what they use.
Nobody's against. Nobody's for that.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But you said that you were.
But
that's what said multiple times.
That's the definition most people have for gold ammo. So when you say I don't have a problem with gold ammo, that's what they think you mean.
I didn't say I don't have a problem with gold ammo. I was saying
what you said was that you didn't have a problem if people had to purchase ammunition that gave them a little extra damage. That's exactly what you said.
In addition to what? Finish what I said. Finish my thought there.
That was what you said. I don't remember. I don't have the whole thing.
Well, you can't.
I typed, but you know what? I'm telling you, in the interview that you did with Jintan, you said all of that, right? And
more. And you need to look at more for context so you can see what I'm talking about.
I looked at the context, right? I typed the whole paragraph out of your answer, right? I transcribed it.
Okay,
right?
all right.
And you know what? And you came across, and it was like, as I read that, it was like, this guy is in favor of gold ammo. There's no way I can vote for him anymore.
Yeah, okay? So maybe you're the one voter that would have voted for me that changed their mind because I wasn't clear on gold ammo. But if you listen to it again, I think you'll be clear that I was saying cosmetics are the right way to go about it. I mean, I said it at the very end. It's what I said, and I was not referring to. Go back and listen to it again. That's what I said.
I listened to that thing 3 times
we'll listen
before
to
I
it
even
together.
tried to do it.
You and I will listen to it together, and then you can point out the stuff.
See, I think I just want to interject here, but I think the serious issue here is, your definition or what appears to be what you consider to be your definition of gold ammo is not the definition of gold ammo that other people had. Whether you tried to sort of clarify the point later on and that kind of thing, it's kind of
I actually don't think it matters. I think that I think the moment somebody utters the words gold ammo,
and that's the point,
out of their mouth,
and that's politics.
It is a scarlet letter word.
That's the problem.
People just react.
Exactly.
And the reality is, if you're explaining, you're losing. And if if it takes you more than 10 seconds to explain what you meant by it, nobody's going to pay attention.
No, I'm not going back to try to correct a mistake. I'm not going back.
Well, I know. Look, I know, and it sucks because I know that you are not in favor of requiring people to
the
buy
question
things.
The question was, do people get really sensitive about monetization? And that was what the question was about. So the answer to the question was, don't be sensitive about monetization until you understand how it affects you. And that's the sum of the entire answer. And that came across wrong.
And if you had said it that way and didn't say gold ammo, I think nobody would have a problem.
I don't think but that's the thing. Whoa. Let's stop for 1 sec. So you just said, don't worry about monetization unless it affects you, right?
Until you know how it affects you.
Until you know, EVE is such a complex economy, it's incredibly hard for people to understand how even minor changes to monetization and the global EVE economy will affect you. So people can predict and they can look and they can evaluate in theorycraft and try to say, well, if they, introduce this new thing, this could cause this, situation. Like, because one of the big things we've talked about in EVE for a long time is, or the worry that CCP would introduce, gold ships effectively, and how that would affect the Nullsec meta, etc. Like, are we then going to be required to, find some way to acquire out of game funds as an alliance to pay for these gold ships, etc., etc. There's many worries that players have, and monetization is an incredibly sore topic for EVE players, especially because unless you're playing for all your accounts with Plex, which I'm sure many players do, the vast majority of EVE players are putting in significantly more than a monthly subscription, a singular monthly subscription, I should say. Mm-hmm. So it's very uncomfortable for people to be told, we understand you pay, but we got to milk you some more, and people get very upset about it.
I think it's happening now. I think it's always happened, but now it's happening a lot clearer than it used to, whether people realize it or not.
Listen, nobody minds paying extra for skins because they know that is an entire.
We're talking about buying a character, buying an entire capital fleet for Red Overlord, buying characters off the bazaar.
Okay, it gets very gray. So here's the thing. I was the one 9, 10, 15, I think it was 12 years ago, fighting Red Overlord's capital fleet. Mm-hmm. And it never bothered me that they had some Russian aluminum tycoon's son who owned all this money and was buying his own capital fleet. We still kicked his ass. We fucking put him in the ground. He's dead. He's nobody now.
And the other thing point is, and that's why I get really frustrated when we talk about monetization.
Yes, in game.
When people talk about pay to win, because just because you can buy a ship does not mean you know how to fly it. Just because you can skill inject into a character doesn't mean you know what you're doing.
Just because you can buy gold ammo.
You can buy a Titan character.
Just because you can buy gold ammo doesn't mean you can do anything.
That's the thing. But the thing is, that's why EVE is not pay to win, and it's never going to be pay to win, because you can't get better at the game than somebody else just by paying money. And having a better ship is completely subjective to the time and situation. You can credit card a Titan and you're going to lose it. You can credit card a Super.
Not if you have 50 Titans around you. You're not.
Yes, you will.
Yes,
it
you
still
can.
Is gonna happen.
He knows.
No,
you
so.
know from personal experience.
Oh, did you have 50 guys around you, Brisk?
No, I do.
Oh, that's because you were popular. That's why the guys.
Hey, you know what? At the end of the day, that's one of the things I get frustrated with, because I feel like we spend a lot of time on monetization stuff, and the reality is what we really need to be doing is telling CCP, here's what's okay, here's what's not. They know generally where the line is, but the fact is, like we told them, we've been telling them Alliance skins forever. Not just this CSM, previous CSMs, Alliance skins. Get us Alliance skins. You are leaving money on the table.
Where
are the Alliance skins? We're still.
It seems like that's waiting. The only thing people will wear. And
no. Here's the thing. CCP leaves so much money on the table. Not just like a little bit of money, but like fountains and fountains of money on the table on their pricing scheme for skins, on the fact there's no Citadel skins, on the fact there's no Alliance skins, no Corp skins, no like. Yep. The amount of money people would pay just if skins were normally priced. Why can I not buy cool? Like, the thing is, you cycle through ships so commonly in EVE. Why can there not just be like $2 skins, like times 10 in every color for every ship, right? Like, why does it have to be a $20 skin for each capital? Like, and there's only 5 of them. Like, give us some selection, give us some choice, give us some variety. Understand the supply and demand curve. This is one of the most upsetting things for me, because there's so much more. I know myself and many other players would be willing to pay, but when you're like, it's $20 for this Archon skin, I don't know if I want to do that.
It's the same thing with like ship models. It's like, guys, just find a partner, a vendor that'll make ship models. I will buy them all. There's money constantly being left on the table, and that's not something we have a lot of impact on. We can just keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up. They know it, so I don't know what the issue is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, listen, we've been at it 2 hours. We're going to go ahead and end the show. Want to thank everybody for showing up. We will probably bring these topics up again at some point and invite you all
Not
to talk
that one.
Some more.
Yeah, can we please never talk about fucking gold ammo?
No, I think you're going to hear a lot more about it in the future. But we'll see.
I think you will be very wrong on that matter.
Just admit that you flubbed that answer, and everything will be.
I think what needs to happen is we need to
affect anything.
I think what needs to happen is we need to make sure that definitions are, set in stone for certain things.
Okay, so I want to thank Dirk and Brisk for bringing their professionalism to our very last-minute presentation, and McLeod for being up so late doing it, and Billy for joining us and putting some real fire in this fire and insight into this whole program that we just had. This was a lot of fun. And also Noisy Gamer, thanks for joining us. He's the one that compiles a lot of the CSM stuff. All these guys, thank you very much. They do a lot of work for you guys, you fans.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah. You guys have any anything that you want to plug or anyone say hello to or any of that kind of stuff? Okay.
See all you people in Toronto, maybe?
Yes.
Have fun, everybody in Toronto.
In 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
In about 24 hours, I'll be in a hotel.
I also want to say hi to all my Init bros. Hi to all my Karma Fleet bros. Saren, you're the man. Darkhawk, you're the man. I called you Darkwing. I can't believe that. All you guys that were watching and giving me shit. Tony, thank you. So keep on trucking.
Okay, and I also want to say, for the actual results to this election, tune in to EVE Online stream. That is Saturday at 10 a.m. local time, right? Which is Eastern time for that event.
Are any of the CSM candidates going to be in Toronto? Do we know?
Dunk is already there.
I hear Steve is.
Steve is on his way or is going to be there. Okay. I don't know who else.
Yep. There will be a few. I know at least those. I don't know who else.
Matterall's given a presentation on various forms of ammunition.
Yeah. How to load ammo properly.
Really?
Gold guns.
No.
How to be a
No, I
punching
won't be
bag.
there.
No, he's not.
I won't be there.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
dude,
I
don't
won't
do
be there.
that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I
Sorry.
watched that show where you talked about gold ammo for 2 hours. It wasn't good.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We will see you at the beginning of season 3 of Talking in Stations in a few weeks. Please enjoy the Toronto and Eve North that is happening this weekend. Enjoy the stream. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.